The night sky over the Atacama Desert was darker than usual. Dr. Eleanor Rodriguez had been working at the research station for 3 years, and she knew these stars better than the back of her hand. But tonight, something was different. A strange streak of light cut across the horizon, to slow for a meteor and to bright for space junk. Eleanor grabbed her equipment and headed out into the cold desert air. Her boots crunched against the rocky ground as she followed the GPS coordinates. Where the object had landed, the research station was miles behind her now, just a tiny dot of light in the vast darkness. When she finally reached the crash site, Eleanor expected to find a small crater and maybe some interesting rock samples. Instead, she found something that made her heart stop. There, half buried in the sand, was what looked like a person. But as she got closer, she realized this was no ordinary human being. The figure had skin that seemed to shimmer like oil on water, changing colors in the moonlight. Long, silver hair spread out across the sand like spilled mercury. The face was beautiful, but somehow different. The features to perfect, the bone structure to delicate. And when Eleanor checked for a pulse, the skin felt warm, but not quite right. Like touching silk that had been left in the sun. Eleanor had studied biology her entire life. She had seen strange creatures from the deepest parts of the ocean and the highest mountains. But this was something beyond her understanding. This being was clearly not from Earth. The smart thing would have been to call her team, contact the government, follow proper procedures. But as Eleanor knelt beside the unconscious figure, she noticed something that changed everything. The being was injured. Dark blue liquid seeped from wounds on her arms and legs. Her breathing was shallow and uneven. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. This was a person who needed help. Eleanor made a decision that would change her life forever. She carefully lifted the being and carried her back to the research station. The creature was surprisingly light, almost as if her bones were hollow like a bird's. Eleanor managed to sneak past the main buildings and into her private quarters without anyone seeing. Over the next few hours, Eleanor did her best to treat the wounds. She had some medical training, but nothing had prepared her for this. The blue liquid that served as blood seemed to clot on its own, and the wounds began healing faster than should have been possible. By morning, cuts that looked serious were already closing up. The being slept for 2 full days. Eleanor stayed by her side, checking her condition and wondering what she had gotten herself into. She told her colleagues she was feeling sick and needed rest, buying herself time to figure out what to do. On the 3rd morning, Eleanor woke up to find 2 large, violet eyes staring at her. The being was awake, sitting up in bed and looking around the room with curiosity rather than fear. When she saw Eleanor, something that might have been a smile crossed her features. "You helped me," the being said, though her lips barely moved. The voice seemed to come from inside Eleanor's own head, soft and musical. "I can feel your kindness." Eleanor nearly fell off her chair. "You can talk. You can communicate." The being tilted her head, studying Eleanor like she was a fascinating puzzle. "Not talk, exactly. I can sense your thoughts, your feelings. They're so intense, so colorful. My people, we think differently." Over the following days, Eleanor learned that the being's name was something that sounded like wind chimes when she said it. But she asked Eleanor to call her Zara. She explained that she came from a place far beyond the stars, where her people lived in harmony but without the strong emotions that humans experienced. "We observe," Zara explained during one of their conversations. "We learn. We study other worlds from a distance, but we don't usually make contact. So why are you here?" Eleanor asked. Zara's expression grew uncertain. "I was supposed to just watch your people and report back, but my ship had problems, and now," she paused, placing a hand over her heart. "Now I feel things I've never felt before. When you helped me, when you showed me kindness, something changed inside me." Eleanor found herself spending more and more time with Zara. She brought her books to read, music to listen to, and simple human foods to try. Watching Zara experience these things for the first time was like seeing the world through new eyes. The way she marveled at the taste of chocolate, or how she sat perfectly still while listening to classical music, completely absorbed in them. sounds. But it was more than just curiosity that drew Elena to spend time with her mysterious guest. There was something about Zara that made Elena feel understood in a way she never had before. Maybe it was the telepathic connection. Or maybe it was just the way Zara listened so intently to everything Elena said. As the days passed, Elena noticed changes in Zara. Her skin began to look more human, less shimmery. Her movements became more natural, less graceful but more relatable. It was as if she was adapting to be more like Elena without even trying. "Is it dangerous for you to be here so long?" Elena asked one evening as they sat together watching the sunset. Through her small window, Zara was quiet for a long moment. "I should have contacted my people by now. They'll be wondering where I am." But she looked at Elena with those amazing violet eyes. "I don't want to leave. These feelings you've taught me, they're like nothing I've ever experienced. The warmth, the connection, the way you care about things so deeply. My people have lived for thousands of years without this, but now I can't imagine going back." Elena felt her heart skip a beat. She had been trying not to think about what would happen when Zara eventually had to leave. The thought of going back to her quiet, lonely life at the research station seemed impossible now. "What will happen if you don't contact them?" Elena asked. "They'll come looking for me," Zara said simply. "And when they find me like this, changed by human contact, I don't know what they'll do." That night, Elena lay awake thinking about everything that had happened 3 weeks ago. She had been a dedicated scientist living a predictable life. Now she was harboring a being from another world, someone who had somehow become the most important person in her life. She knew that eventually they would have to face the consequences of Zara's extended stay on Earth. But for now, Elena was content to live in this strange, wonderful bubble they had created together. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight, she was just grateful that a streak of light across the desert sky had brought Zara into her world. 3 weeks had passed since Elena found Zara in the desert, and everything had changed. Zara's injuries had healed completely, leaving no trace of the crash that brought her to Earth. More importantly, she had learned to control her appearance well enough to look almost entirely human. Her skin no longer shimmered. Her hair had darkened to a more natural shade, and those striking violet eyes now appeared as a deep blue that could pass for human in most light. Elena had to admit, watching Zara transform was both fascinating and a little heartbreaking. Each day, she seemed a little less like the mysterious being Elena had first discovered and more like an ordinary person. But there was still something special about her, something that made Elena's pulse quicken whenever she walked into a room. "I think I'm ready," Zara announced one morning as Elena prepared to leave for work at the main research facility. "Ready for what?" Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "To see your world, to meet your people. I've been hiding in this room for weeks, learning about humans from books and videos, but I want to experience it myself." Elena felt a mix of excitement and worry. She had been dreading this moment and looking forward to it at the same time. Part of her wanted to keep Zara safe and hidden forever, but she knew that wasn't fair to either of them. "Are you sure you can maintain the human appearance?" Elena asked. "If anyone suspects what you really are," Zara smiled, and Elena's heart did that little flip it had started doing whenever Zara looked at her that way. "I've been practicing." "Watch." Zara closed her eyes and concentrated. Elena watched as her features shifted slightly, becoming even more human-like. When she opened her eyes again, they were a warm brown color that perfectly matched her now dark hair. "How do I look?" Zara asked. "Perfect," Elena breathed, then quickly cleared her throat. "I mean, you look completely normal. No one will suspect anything." The first few hours at the research station went smoothly. Elena introduced Zara as a visiting scientist from another university, and her colleagues accepted the explanation without question. Zara was quiet and observant, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine interest in everyone's work. But Elena began to notice something strange. Her usually grumpy colleague Dr. Peterson seemed unusually cheerful. The lab technician who normally complained about everything was humming while she worked. Even the security guard who rarely spoke to anyone stopped to chat with Elena. about his weekend plans. It wasn't until lunch break that Eleanor realized what was happening. She found Zara sitting alone in the cafeteria, looking overwhelmed. "Are you okay?" Eleanor asked, sitting down beside her. "I think I made a mistake," Zara whispered. "I'm affecting them, all of your colleagues. I can feel their emotions, and I think I'm accidentally making them feel better, happier, more at peace." Eleanor stared at her. "You can do that. My people are naturally empathic. We sense emotions and sometimes influence them without meaning, too. But with humans, the effect seems much stronger. Your emotions are so intense compared to what I'm used to." Zara looked distressed. "I'm not doing it on purpose, Eleanor. I would never manipulate people like that." Eleanor reached out and took Zara's hand, not caring who might see. "I know you wouldn't, but maybe it's not such a bad thing. Everyone seems happier today. But that's just it," Zara said, her voice barely audible. "How do you know your feelings? For me, are real. What if I've been influencing you this whole time without realizing it? What if everything you think you feel is just my empathic abilities affecting your mind?" The question hit Eleanor like a punch to the stomach. She had been wondering about her growing feelings for Zara, trying to understand how she could feel so strongly about someone she had only known for a few weeks. Was it possible that none of it was real? "I need some air," Eleanor said, standing up abruptly. She walked outside to the small garden behind the research station, her mind racing. The past 3 weeks had been the happiest of her life. For the first time, she felt truly connected to another person. But what if it was all artificial? What if Zara's alien abilities had created feelings that didn't really exist? When Zara found her 20 minutes later, Eleanor was sitting on a bench staring at the mountains in the distance. "Eleanor," Zara said softly, sitting down beside her. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I was scared and confused, and I hurt you." "But you're right to wonder," Eleanor replied without looking at her. "How can we know if what we feel is real?" Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What if I left just for a few days? Went far enough away that any influence I might have would fade. Then you could see how you feel without me around." Eleanor's heart clenched at the thought, which was probably answer enough, but she needed to be sure. "Okay, but where would you go? You don't have anywhere else. I'll manage. I'm not as helpless as I was when you found me." Zara stood up. "If what you feel for me is real, I'll know when I come back. And if it's not," she didn't finish the sentence. That evening, Zara packed the few belongings Eleanor had gotten for her into a small backpack. They stood at the door of Eleanor's quarters, both struggling to find the right words. "How will I know you're safe?" Eleanor asked. "You'll know," Zara said simply. "I'll make sure you know." After Zara left, Eleanor felt like a part of her had been torn away. She tried to convince herself it was just the sudden absence of Zara's empathic influence, but deep down she knew better. The ache in her chest felt too real, too personal to be artificial. The next few days were miserable. Eleanor threw herself into her work, but nothing could distract her from thinking about Zara. She found herself checking her phone constantly, hoping for some sign that she was okay. She barely slept, and when she did, she dreamed about violet eyes and silver hair. On the 4th day, Eleanor was working late in the lab when she felt it. A warm sensation in her mind, like a gentle touch on her consciousness. She looked up to see Zara standing in the doorway, looking tired but somehow more radiant than ever. "Did you miss me?" Zara asked with a small smile. Eleanor dropped everything and ran to her, wrapping her arms around Zara before she could think about whether it was appropriate. Zara hugged her back just as tightly. "I thought about you every second you were gone." Eleanor whispered against Zara's shoulder. It had nothing to do with empathic abilities or alien influence. It was just me, missing the most important person in my life. When they finally pulled apart, Eleanor could see tears in Zara's eyes. "I felt the same way." Zara said, "Being away from you was like losing part of myself. I never knew connection could feel like this. So what happens now?" Eleanor asked. Zara smiled, and this time Eleanor was certain that the flutter in her heart was entirely her own. "Now we figure out how to make this work, together." 2 months had passed since Zara's return, and Elena could see the changes happening more clearly each day. Zara was becoming more human in ways that went far beyond her appearance. She laughed at jokes now, really laughed, with her whole body, shaking and tears forming in her eyes. She had developed preferences for certain foods, favorite songs, and even small habits like humming while she worked. But Elena was also noticing things that worried her. Sometimes, when Zara thought no one was looking, she would press her hands to her temples as if fighting off a headache. Other times, she would stare off into space with a confused expression, like she was trying to remember something important but couldn't quite grasp it. "Are you feeling okay?" Elena asked one morning when she caught Zara doing the temple pressing. "Thing again. I'm fine," Zara said quickly, but Elena could see the concern in her eyes. "Just adjusting." Elena didn't push, but she made a mental note to keep watching. She had been doing research in her spare time, trying to understand what might be happening to Zara. The problem was, there weren't exactly textbooks on alien biology and emotional development. That afternoon, something happened that changed everything. Elena was in the main lab with 3 of her colleagues when an equipment malfunction caused a dangerous chemical leak. Alarms started blaring, and everyone began evacuating according to protocol. But Dr. Chen, the oldest member of their team, tripped and fell near the source of the leak. The toxic fumes were spreading fast, and there was no way to reach him safely. Elena watched in horror as her colleagues struggled to get up, coughing and disoriented. Without thinking, she started toward him, but before she could take more than a few steps, Zara appeared beside her. "Stay back," Zara said firmly, before Elena could protest. Zara walked directly into the cloud of toxic gas. Elena watched through the observation window as Zara picked up Dr. Chen as easily as if he weighed nothing, and carried him to safety. The gas that should have knocked her unconscious within seconds seemed to have no effect on her at all. Elena's other colleagues stared in amazement as Zara emerged from the contaminated area, completely unharmed. Dr. Chen was unconscious but breathing steadily. "How did you do that?" Dr. Peterson asked, his eyes wide. "That gas should have killed you." Zara looked panicked, realizing what she had just revealed. I held my breath," she said weakly, "for 3 minutes, while carrying a full-grown man." Peterson pressed, "And your skin isn't even irritated." "That chemical burns human tissue on contact." Elena stepped in quickly. "We need to get Dr. Chen to the medical bay. Questions can wait." She gave Zara a meaningful look and guided her away from the group. That evening, Elena found Zara sitting outside behind the research station, staring up at the stars. "Are you angry with me?" Zara asked. Without turning around, Elena sat down beside her on the rocky ground. "Angry? You saved Dr. Chen's life." "Why would I be angry?" "Because now people will ask questions. They'll want to know how I did what I did, and I don't have good answers." Elena studied Zara's profile in the moonlight. "What are you not telling me?" "I know there's something," Zara sighed. "The changes I've been experiencing, they're more serious than I let on. My body is adapting to be more like yours. But it's not just cosmetic. I'm losing some of my abilities." "What kind of abilities?" "My connection to my people, for one. I used to be able to communicate across vast distances, sense other members of my species. But that range has been shrinking. Some days, I feel completely cut off from them." Zara finally looked at Elena. "And my healing ability is weakening. The toxic gas today didn't hurt me, but a few weeks ago, I would have been able to neutralize it completely. Now I can only resist it." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert night air. "Is this dangerous for you?" "I don't know. My people have never studied what happens when one of us stays in close contact with humans for so long. I'm essentially conducting an experiment on myself, and I have no idea what the outcome will be." "Then maybe you should contact your people. Get their help." Zara shook her head. "They would just take me away from here. Away from you. And Elena," she took Elena's hand. "I can't lose what we have. These feelings. This connection. It's become more important to me than anything else in the universe." Elena squeezed Zara's hand. "But if staying here is hurting you." "It's not hurting me. It's changing me. There's a difference, Zara smiled. Besides, I think the changes might be affecting you too. Elena blinked. What do you mean? Haven't you noticed? Your research has taken some interesting turns lately. That paper you wrote about cellular adaptation in extreme environments. Where did those insights come from? Elena thought about it. She had been having unusual flashes of understanding in her work, seeing connections and patterns that she had never noticed before. She had attributed it to being inspired by Zara's presence. But maybe it was something more. You think being around you is changing me physically, not physically, exactly, but maybe mentally, emotionally, opening pathways in your mind that weren't there before. Zara looked excited now. What if this is evolution, Elena? What if contact between our species doesn't just change me, but creates something new in both of us? The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Elena had dedicated her life to studying evolution and adaptation, but she had never imagined becoming part of the process herself. Over the next few weeks, Elena began keeping a journal, documenting both Zara's changes and her own. She noticed that her intuition about her research subjects had become almost supernatural. She could predict how organisms would adapt to new environments with an accuracy that amazed her colleagues. Her understanding of complex biological systems seemed to deepen every day. Meanwhile, Zara was struggling with her own transformation. Elena would sometimes find her standing perfectly still, eyes closed, as if she were listening for something very far away. They're calling, Zara explained. One day, my people, I can barely hear them now, but they're looking for me. What will you tell them? The truth. That I've found something here worth more than anything I've ever known. Zara looked at Elena with an intensity that made her heart race. But I'm scared they won't understand. My people value logic above all else. They might see what's happening to me as a kind of sickness. Elena moved closer to Zara. What's happening to you isn't a sickness. You're becoming more than what you were before. That's not loss, that's growth. But what if they try to take me away? What if they decide that humans are dangerous to our species? Elena had been wondering the same thing. If Zara's people came looking for her, would they see Elena as a threat? Would they blame her for Zara's transformation? Then we'll face that together, Elena said firmly. Whatever happens, we'll handle it together. Zara smiled, but Elena could see the worry in her eyes. They both knew that their time together might be limited. Somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, Zara's people were searching for her. And when they found her, Elena and Zara's relationship would face its greatest test yet. That night, Elena lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. 6 months ago, she had been a quiet scientist living a predictable life. Now she was involved in what might be the most important evolutionary development in human history. The woman she loved was changing before her eyes, becoming something new and wonderful, but also fragile and uncertain. Elena made a decision. If Zara's people came for her, Elena wouldn't let her face them alone. Whatever the consequences, they would meet this challenge as partners. Their love had already survived doubt and separation. Now it would have to survive first contact between two species, and Elena was determined to make sure it did. It happened on a Tuesday morning, just as Elena was getting ready for work. She was brushing her teeth when the entire research station started shaking. Not an earthquake. She had lived through plenty of those. This was different. The vibration seemed to come from above, like something massive was hovering over them. Elena ran outside and looked up at the sky. What she saw made her blood freeze. A ship hung silently in the air above the station, so large it blocked out the sun. It didn't look like anything humans had ever built. The surface seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and there were no visible engines or exhaust, yet it floated effortlessly against gravity. Zara, Elena whispered, then turned and ran back to her quarters. She found Zara standing perfectly still in the middle of the room, her eyes closed and her face pale. As Elena watched, Zara's carefully maintained human appearance began to fade. Her skin started to shimmer again, her hair lightened to that otherworldly silver. And when she opened her eyes, they glowed with their original violet light. They found me, Zara said simply. What do we do? Elena asked, though she was pretty sure she already knew the answer. before Zara could respond. The air in the room began to shimmer. 3 figures materialized out of nowhere, appearing as if they had stepped through an invisible doorway. Elena had to steady herself against the wall. She was looking at Zara's people for the first time. They were tall and graceful, with the same flowing features as Zara, but somehow more distant, more perfect. Their eyes held an ancient wisdom that made Elena feel like a child in comparison. The one in the center, who seemed to be their leader, looked at Zara with what Elena could only describe as deep disappointment. Zara of the Seventh Circle, the leader said, though like Zara, his lips barely moved. The voice echoed inside Elena's head. "You have been silent for too long." "Hello, Kale," Zara replied, and Elena could hear the sadness in her voice. "I know why you're here." Kale's gaze shifted to Elena, and she felt like he was looking right through her, seeing everything she was and everything she wasn't. "This is the human who has caused your condition. Her name is Elena," Zara said firmly, "and she didn't cause anything. What happened to me was my choice, was it?" Another of the aliens asked, "This one female? Or were you influenced by exposure to their primitive emotional systems?" "We have observed this before, Zara. Humans have a way of infecting other species with their instability." Elena felt anger flare in her chest. "Excuse me, but who are you calling primitive?" The aliens looked surprised that she had spoken. Kale studied her with renewed interest. "You can understand us clearly. That is unusual. Elena has been changing too," Zara explained. "Our connection has affected both of us." This seemed to concern the aliens even more. Kale moved closer to Elena, and she had to fight the urge to step back. "Show me," he said. Elena wasn't sure what he meant until she felt a gentle pressure in her mind. Suddenly, she could sense things she had never noticed before. She could feel the emotional state of everyone in the research station. Her colleagues were frightened and confused by the appearance of the ship. She could sense the complex biological systems operating in the desert around them, the way every living thing was connected in an intricate web of life. But most clearly, she could feel the aliens themselves. Their emotions were different from human feelings, cooler, more controlled, but still present, and underneath their calm exterior, she sensed something that surprised her. "They were afraid." "Remarkable," Kale said, withdrawing from her mind. "The human has developed empathic abilities. This confirms our worst fears." "Worst fears?" Elena asked. The third alien spoke for the first time. "Throughout our history, there have been others like Zara, members of our species who became attached to beings from other worlds. In every case, the outcome was the same. Both the alien individual and their chosen companion eventually died from the biological incompatibility." Elena felt the blood drain from her face. "What do you mean?" "Your cellular structure is too different," Kale explained with what seemed like genuine regret. "The empathic bond you share is forcing both of your bodies to adapt in ways they were never designed for." Zara is becoming more human, but her physiology cannot sustain such changes indefinitely. And you are developing abilities that your human brain cannot process long-term. Elena looked at Zara, who wouldn't meet her eyes. "Is this true?" "I don't know," Zara whispered. "Maybe. But Elena, even if it is, I don't care. The time I've spent with you has been worth any risk." "But I care," Elena said, her voice breaking. "I won't let loving me destroy you." Kale stepped forward. "We can solve this problem. We have developed a process that can reverse the changes in both of you. Zara will return to her original state, and you will lose the abilities you have gained. The memories of your time together will be softened. You will remember meeting, but not the intensity of your bond." "No," Zara said immediately. "I won't let you erase what we have, even if it means your death." The female alien asked, "Even if it means hers?" Elena felt like the ground was falling away beneath her feet. She looked at Zara, really looked at her, and for the first time noticed things she had been ignoring. Zara was thinner than she had been weeks ago. There were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before, and sometimes, when she thought Elena wasn't watching, she would touch her chest as if something hurt. "How long do we have?" Elena asked quietly, based on her observations of similar cases Perhaps 6 months. Cale replied, maybe less. The room fell silent except for the hum of the alien ship outside. Elena felt tears running down her cheeks, but she barely noticed them. 6 months. 6 months to love the most amazing person she had ever met, and then they would both be gone. But as Elena stood there, feeling the weight of this impossible choice, something occurred to her. She thought about all the research she had been doing, all the insights that had been coming to her with increasing frequency. She thought about Zara's transformation and how it had made her more than what she was before, not less. What if you're wrong? Elena said suddenly. The aliens looked at her with surprise. Wrong about what? What if this isn't evolution failing? What if it's evolution succeeding? Elena's voice grew stronger as the idea took shape. You said this has happened before, but did you ever actually study it? Did you ever try to help instead of just observing and then erasing it? The biological incompatibility is a fact, Cale said firmly. Based on what? Your assumptions about how different species should interact. Elena stepped closer to him, no longer intimidated. I'm a biologist. I study adaptation and evolution. What's happening to Zara and me isn't random mutation. It's guided evolution. We're not becoming incompatible. We're becoming something new. Zara looked at Elena with hope starting to replace the despair in her eyes. Elena's right. I'm not losing my abilities. They're changing, adapting. And the connection we share isn't weakening me. It's teaching me new ways to be strong. This is impossible, the female alien said. The biological barriers cannot be overcome. Then prove it. Elena challenged them. Don't just assume we're going to fail. Study us. Learn from what's happening. Maybe what you've always seen as a problem is actually the solution to something bigger. Cale exchanged glances with his companions. Elena could sense their uncertainty through her new empathic abilities. They had come here, expecting to collect a wayward member of their species and solve a simple problem. Instead, they were being asked to reconsider thousands of years of assumptions about how the universe worked. You would risk everything on a theory? Cale asked. Elena reached for Zara's hand. I would risk everything for love, and I think that's exactly the kind of primitive, unstable, beautiful human emotion that might just change the universe. For the first time since they had arrived, Elena saw something that might have been a smile cross Cale's face. Very well, he said. We will observe, we will study, and perhaps we will learn. 6 months later, Elena stood in what used to be the Atacama Desert Research Station and marveled at how much everything had changed. The small building had been expanded into a sprawling complex that served as the first official contact point between humans and Zara's people, who called themselves the Ethereal Collective. But the biggest change wasn't the new buildings or the advanced technology that had been shared between the species. The biggest change was in Elena herself. She looked at her reflection in the mirror each morning and saw someone who was still unmistakably human, but also something more. Her eyes held flecks of violet now, and when she concentrated, she could sense the emotional states of people from miles away. Her understanding of biological systems had expanded beyond anything she could have imagined possible. More importantly, she was alive. They both were. The dire predictions of Cale and his team had not come to pass. Instead of dying from biological incompatibility, Elena and Zara had continued to evolve together. Elena's human adaptability had proven to be exactly what was needed to bridge the gap between species. Her body had learned to process the changes gradually, while her mind had developed new pathways to handle her expanded capabilities. Zara had undergone her own transformation. She was no longer losing her original abilities. Instead, she had learned to use them in new ways. Her empathic range had actually increased. But now she could choose what to feel and what to block out. She had become a bridge between the cool logic of her people and the passionate intensity of humans. Good morning, beautiful, Zara said, appearing in the doorway of their shared laboratory. After months of living and working together, Elena still felt her heart skip a beat every time she saw her. Morning, Elena replied, turning from her computer screen. I've been reviewing the data from yesterday's tests. Dr. Williams and Dr. Lee are showing the same adaptation patterns we did, just at a slower rate. Over the past few months, other humans had volunteered to participate in controlled contact experiments with members of the Ethereal Collective. The results had been remarkable. Not everyone experienced the dramatic changes that Elena and Zara had, but every human who spent extended time with the aliens showed some level of enhanced intuition, empathy, and problem-solving ability. Any word from the Collective Council? Elena asked. Zara smiled. Actually, yes. They've approved the expanded exchange program. 50 more of my people will be coming to Earth next month, and 50 humans will be invited to visit our home world. Elena felt a thrill of excitement. 6 months ago, the idea of humans traveling to another planet would have been pure science fiction. Now it was just another day at the office. The door to their lab opened, and Kale walked in. Elena still found it amusing how the serious alien leader had adapted to human customs. He now wore clothing similar to theirs and had learned to knock before entering rooms. Elena, Zara, he said with a slight nod. I have news from the council that I think you'll find interesting. What kind of news? Zara asked. They want to officially document your case study. What happened between you two is being recognized as the first successful example of interspecies evolution. They're calling it the Elena-Zara Protocol. Elena blushed. They're naming it after us? Your relationship has become a model for how different species can not only coexist, but actually help each other grow. Kale explained. The council has spent months studying your data, and they've concluded that what you achieved represents a new stage in cosmic evolution. What does that mean, practically speaking? Elena asked. It means we're going to be very busy. Zara said with a laugh. The collective has identified 17 other species that might benefit from similar contact. Experiments, they want us to help develop protocols for each one. Elena felt overwhelmed and excited at the same time. We're going to meet 17 different alien species. If you're willing, Kale said. Your unique bond and Elena's adaptability make you the ideal team to pioneer these new relationships. After Kale left, Elena and Zara sat together in their favorite spot, a small garden they had created outside the lab, where earth plants grew alongside exotic specimens that Zara's people had brought from their home world. Can you believe this is our life now? Elena asked, watching a butterfly with wings that seemed to shift through every color of the rainbow land. On a flower that glowed softly in the afternoon sun. Sometimes I feel like I'm dreaming. Zara replied, taking Elena's hand. A year ago, I was just an observer, watching other worlds from a distance and never really connecting with anything. Now I'm part of something that's changing the entire galaxy. Elena squeezed her hand. Do you ever miss it? Your old life? Zara considered the question seriously. I miss the simplicity sometimes. Life was easier when I didn't feel things as deeply as I do now. But Elena, she turned to look at her with those amazing violet-flecked eyes. I wouldn't trade a single moment of what we have for all the peace and logic in the universe. Elena leaned over and kissed her, still amazed after all this time at how perfectly they fit together. What had started as a desperate craving had grown into something steady and strong, a love that had literally changed both of their species. So, Elena said when they broke apart, ready to meet our next alien visitors tomorrow? The collective had arranged for representatives from 3 different species to visit Earth simultaneously. Elena and Zara would be conducting the first contact protocols for all of them. Bring it on, Zara said with a grin. Though I have to say, none of them are going to be as interesting as the human who saved my life in the desert. Elena laughed. The human who fell in love with an alien who crashed into her boring life and turned it into the greatest adventure in the history of the galaxy. You mean, that's the one, Zara said, pulling Elena closer. As the sun set over their transformed little corner of the world, Elena reflected on everything that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, she had been a lonely scientist studying life in one of the most isolated places on Earth. Now she was at the center of the most important development in cosmic history, working alongside the love of her life to build bridges between worlds. The funny thing was, despite all the amazing technology and incredible discoveries that now filled her daily life. The most miraculous thing was still the simplest, the way Zara looked at her, every morning like she was the most precious thing in the universe, and the way Elena's heart still raced every time Zara smiled. That night, as they lay together under a sky filled with stars that no longer seemed impossibly distant, Elena thought about the future. There would be challenges ahead. There always were when you were pioneering something completely new. But whatever came next, they would face it together. The alien girl's craving for the human who ignited her fire had become something even more powerful. A love that burned bright enough to light the way for entire civilizations. And Elena couldn't wait to see where that light would lead them next. In the distance, ships from 3 different worlds were approaching Earth, carrying beings who would soon experience their own version of first contact. Elena and Zara had proven that love could transcend any barrier, even the vast emptiness of space itself. Now it was time to share that gift with the rest of the galaxy. The fire that had started with a crash in the desert had become a beacon of hope for countless worlds, and it was just the beginning.